Hello, everyone. Bill Lovelace with Lovelace Local News. And this is our first episode of Bill at George's. And we're here at George's 50s Diner at the corner of San Antonio and Atlantic. And my first guest is an old friend of mine and a Long Beach legend, as I call him. And that's Bill Hillberg, who wrote for the Press Telegram. And we're going to talk to him a little about his family, his start at the Press Telegram, and a bunch of other stuff. But before we do, George, the owner of George's 50s Diner, has a little treat for us.
Yeah, we got a sunbeam.
Oh,
We got
sprinkles.
a cherry shake.
Cherry shake and some French
We
fries.
got some French fries as well.
So come on over here. Get down here so people can see this handsome guy.
Yes.
This, and Bill said this before we started shooting, this restaurant, folks out there, if you've not been here, it's a fantastic place, a lot of history. George opened up here in 1996.
96.
I helped him open up with my DJ business. He asked me to DJ the grand opening out here. We had a ball. We had hundreds and hundreds of people, press, and it was a lot of fun. And Bill said earlier, this was like the original Happy Days Fonzie. What did they call Arnold's? Remember Arnold's? And we happen to be, there he goes, Henry Winkler. Henry Winkler will be our guest on our 6th episode coming up.
Right.
Talk about Happy Days and all that. But
Fonzie.
Fonzie. But George, you were started as a cook here. What year?
1975.
75. He worked his butt off, and he ended up buying the place in 96. And he's kept it preserved. If you come here, it's a true 50s diner. And it used to be called, was it Grissinger's?
It was Terry's Coffee Shop.
Terry's Coffee.
Right before that, it was Limes. And the first people they opened up in 1952, it was Grissinger's.
And Grissinger's lasted for several years.
Several years, I believe till 67. 67, Limes came over, took it over to 72. Terry came over and took over in 1972.
Fantastic. His menu is fantastic. We had breakfast and lunch both earlier, and George is so gracious to bring us out dessert. So George, congratulations. It's great to see. And his wife Helen works here too. She's the owner. You work for Helen. I know that. Thanks again. All right. Bill Hillberg.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on our first episode. And
Glad to be here.
this gentleman has so many stories, and we have a limited time today, but we're going to do a longer version of this interview for our YouTube folks. We can have as long as we want.
Great.
But I want to get on our Instagram page, which we're limited to 15 minutes.
Okay.
So, first off, you were born in what city?
I was actually born in an Air Force base.
Okay, what city?
Belleville, Illinois.
Fantastic. So you're from the Midwest.
Yeah.
You went to high school in the Midwest?
No, I actually grew up on the Eastern Shore of Maryland.
Okay, Maryland. So you've been all over the place?
Yeah.
And what year did you come to Long Beach?
1979.
And you came here for the specific reason of working in...
Newspaper at the Press Telegram. Actually, the IPT, as it was known at the time.
Back in the day, it was the Independent Press Telegram. You had 2 papers in the morning, or one in the morning, one in the afternoon.
Right. And several editions in between.
If you were lucky.
Yes.
And I'm one of 8 children, grew up in Wrigley, and all 5 of the Lovelace older boys than me delivered papers.
Wow.
Yeah, so a lot of history there. You started writing, do you have a column at the time, or just was a cub reporter like Jimmy Olsen?
No, I'd already been a reporter and editor for a suburban chain in Chicago when I came here. So I actually came here as a copy editor.
Okay.
Writing headlines and
So how long did you do that?
Oh, about a year and a half.
And then you went into...
Then I was business editor, which we started our own standalone business section. And then about a year after that, I became the news editor. In other words, in charge of the crew that actually put the paper out. In other words, compiled everything, put the pages together, got screamed at by everyone that we had to make deadlines. So
when I met you back in the mid-'80s, you had the local news section, or the local.
Yeah, I was a local columnist, and they originally called it the Beachcomber. And then I think towards the end it was just they called the Hillberg Report or something.
Oh, okay. So how many years did you do the local news? And I don't mean loco, but sometimes it was loco.
Probably about 8 to 10 years.
And that's when I met you.
Yeah.
You helped me with an issue back in, I think it was 95-ish.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
And that was the power of the media back then. But you have so many stories. I saw you recently. I was watching a rerun of the Huell Hauser show. I forget which one it was.
Yeah.
And when they were closing the Navy base.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that briefly.
Well, Huell had read about it. I had always admired Huell. I loved the way he did things, especially when he'd say things like, "Look, a pair of glasses." Wow. Everything was a wonder to Huell. Anyway, it turns out he was
I know.
He was a Marine Corps veteran, took some interest in the historical value of the naval station, which is about to be closed. But while it was being closed, that was sort of a foregone conclusion. The reuse was the question. And there were two reuses. One was to actually reuse the buildings that were there for some sort of educational or community need. The other one was to level the whole thing and increase the space for the Port of Long Beach. I don't have to tell you who won.
Oh, no. But I remember that episode. It was a 50-minute episode.
It was wonderful, long. Yeah.
And you were in the middle of it for a good 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And walking around with Huell, I remember you talked about the pool, and they were going to preserve this, and they were to keep that. Yeah. There was, I'm a ham radio operator. There was a wonderful ham radio station up there.
Oh, really?
In the gymnasium above. And they had what they call a Collins S line, I believe, which now is like worth megabucks, collector's item.
Wow.
And it was there back in the day, and they had volunteers during the wars that would do phone patches. It was I don't want to go off on a tangent about that.
Right.
But before cell phones, before all that stuff, they had phone patches. So the folks on the lines and in Europe and what have you, they were able to talk to their relatives without a calling card. You didn't know that, did you?
No.
See, I'm teaching you a little bit. But I want you to teach me more.
Okay.
That was a cool episode, and you wrote a lot about it.
Yes. And I think that was one of my favorite things because it got a lot of discussion going. A journalist's job isn't, maybe if you watch cable news these days, it's all opinion. Our job, I saw my job as to maybe foment some discussion. And that one did. There was a lot of talk in town. Ran the full gamut. You had people from of course, who were looking out for the economic interests for the port. You had people who thought that it may be used for something else. You had historical preservationists, and you even had some fringy people who were worried that the future use of the port was going to result in Chinese frogmen invading the city. That's because Costco is a company that was owned by the Chinese government.
Not Costco, the warehouse.
No,
but Costco. Yes.
I still see it. There's plenty of containers around
know,
town.
I do too.
Costco on it. Anyway, it was interesting just to see that whole thing foment. There were some big city meetings. The mayor got involved. It was well done.
So
and it got things going.
That was probably one of your bigger stories you did.
Yeah.
Give me 2 or 3 more that come to mind that were your
I think the one, it was also port related, and it had to do with the harbor and the breakwater. And it just occurred to me, one of the things I really like to do is to look and see, what the hell is that? What's going on over there? And I noticed that I'd done a lot of coverage on the Navy leaving. I went to the last supper at the officers club over there.
Oh, really?
Another thing, yeah. I think I got to MC the meeting or something. Anyway, it occurred to me, okay, the port's automated. You don't have armies of stevedores with their cargo hooks. It's a whole different thing. In fact, someone had told me I'd done a story about the port and just some of the challenges they had with smuggling and handling all this cargo.
Oh, yeah.
And they just said that their goal was, if a ship, one of these huge container ships, if it was in port for more than 2 days, it was going to be hell to pay, because it had to move in, move out. The whole idea was to not just automate, but to speed up the supply chain. And that, and the fact that the Navy was gone, and of course the breakwater was built, like many wartime things, built to protect the harbor during World War II. Unfortunately, World War II was about 2 years over when the wall was completed.
Right.
But it served a purpose. So they had, there was this thing, and I said, well, what if we got rid of it or modified it?
I remember that.
Yeah. And all hell broke loose again, which was great.
You like to stir the pot, don't you?
Well, I like to sit back and see what happens after that. And of course, there were some very impassioned things. It was the old joke, you know, I lived most of my life in Bixby Knolls, under the shadow of the airport. And people from the Belmont Shore area always say, well, you knew there was an airport when you bought your house.
They said, I live in Cal Heights, they say the same thing.
And my response was, you knew there was an ocean when you moved down to the peninsula.
Ah, very good. I like that.
You know,
And speaking of oceans and speaking of the break,
Yeah.
you're the vice president of the Surf Writer Foundation.
Yeah,
Briefly
local
touch on
chapter. Well, it's a really good group, environmentalists. They were looking at studying the breakwater, the reconfiguration. One of the reasons they did was the water quality is not too hot inside the harbor.
Kidding me? I never noticed.
Well, there's bad circulation. There's a lot of things. We do a beach cleanup once a month. We're usually headquartered near the Belmont Pier. Wonderful people come out and pick up stuff, and we weigh it, and we have it carted out.
Oh, good.
There's some amazing items floating around that end up on our beaches and things. Plus, there's no surf here. And of course, in I think it was 1938, in fact, we're looking at having a plaque put up, we and another nonprofit organization, showing that this was the site of the first West Coast Surfing Championship.
Wow.
And there are pictures of a number of people on the longboards. Probably half of them were Hawaiian at the time,
Right.
because that was still the capital of it. Riding waves right by the Villa Riviera. You can imagine.
You can get those pictures at the
Yeah,
historical
I've seen them
site.
all over town. A
So
lot of
speaking
people
of
have-
that volunteer organization
Yeah.
that you work with, you also are involved with Signal Hill,
Yeah,
a city within a city.
yes.
Now you might know this. I asked a friend of mine, Don Moreau, who's a sergeant for Signal Hill PD. I had lunch with him yesterday.
Yeah.
I said, how many cities within a city are there in this country? Do you know about how
No,
many?
I don't know.
He said that, I think he said San Fernando's one of them,
Okay,
because San Fernando's around
right.
LA and they have their own police department and their own, but there's only a handful or a couple handful
Yeah,
in
and I
this
think
country.
most of them are out here.
Yeah, and it's just kind of interesting. But Signal Hill Historical,
Signal Hill Historical Site, a really nice group, led by a man named Larry Blunden, who's been living on top of the hill for a number of years, ever since they built those fine new houses at the top. Just a real giving guy. And and of course, they got together just in time to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Signal Hill. In fact, I was with them just a couple of months ago. Signal Hill also had the first female mayor in California.
really?
Yes. And Jessie, the name.
Jessie Soto, Eunice's sister. I'm
No,
kidding.
no.
I'm kidding.
Oh, Jessie something.
Doesn't matter.
Anyway, she ended up buried in an old cemetery down the city of Orange. So we actually went down on the anniversary of the 100th anniversary of the founding of the city. And Jessie Nelson, I'm sorry, that was her name.
Okay.
And had a little service in the sort of mausoleum
Neat.
where her remains are. And, said a few words about her. Probably always saw her in a long time. And I was thinking at the time how many people must have told Jessie, because she was one of the people who really got the incorporation of Signal Hill going.
Wow.
And what had happened
And what year was this again?
It's
About
1922.
Wow.
No, 1924 when they actually did it. And what had happened was Long Beach wanted, once all this oil was up here, Long Beach, of course, wanted mitts on it. They also wanted to put a...
you said there are mitts on them?
Yeah, get a mitts on it.
Okay.
And also get some revenue, because
Sure.
they were going to put a barrel-head tax on the oil. Well, of course, the oil men and the people who had to live with all the oil, it was all over the streets and everything at the time.
I bet.
Decided that wasn't a very good idea, so they had their own city. They've done some interesting things over the year.
And
They really
I
have.
love the city of Signal Hill. I have a
Mhm.
lot of friends that live in Signal Hill and a lot of friends that are police officers, and I know some of the council people. And tomorrow night, in fact, I'm going to join you and your family and some friends. In the summer, they have a great summer series,
Oh, yeah.
the concerts in the park. And
Right.
tomorrow night is Night Rider, which is a
Yeah.
great band.
A great local band.
And I remember sitting with you and your wife a couple times. We saw the Beatles,
Yes.
and you were giving me the heads up that
Yeah.
they dress the period, and then
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
break they do the more hippie thing, and it was a blast. You know, we
Now,
sit
whoever
there.
does the scheduling for this free summer concert series
It's fantastic.
is
And it's a
inspired. They
great
really
park.
bring it. They're
Kind
all
of a
cover
natural-
bands.
It's kind of a natural amphitheater. The park is. The city of Signal Hill is doing wonderful things,
Yeah.
and I'm glad to be a part of it. And I'm glad to be hanging out with you and your family and friends tomorrow too. But getting back to the press telegram.
Yeah.
You talked about a few of the pieces that you did. Give me two more before we run out of time.
Oh, let me think. Just in general.
What about, I heard back in '96 that the Bixby Highlands Neighborhood Association wanted
that
to,
one, yes.
to succeed
Yeah,
into
some
the
kind
city
of a
of Lakewood.
rabble rouser.
Yeah,
On the
yeah.
phone. Yeah.
Anyway, you can look in the archives of that. Well, it's the Bixby Highlands Neighborhood Improvement Association. Anyway,
The other thing I enjoyed was it turned out to be a series, sort of the African American history of Long Beach, and Ernie McBride, who has a school named after him, one of the newer small specialized, I believe it's a STEM school.
yeah, it's
over
off
there,
Baker and Carson.
Yeah, where DeMille Middle School used to be. I met him and his wife, and it was fascinating. And they sent me on a journey where I met a lot of people, and there was a real history there. And of course, most of it was him.
That's fantastic.
And his phone, and one of my favorite stories that he did, one of the columns that I did, there was a man who was a friend of his, who, as they said back in the day, could pass. He was very light skinned.
Right.
And he was sort of the unofficial mayor of this tiny black neighborhood, which is really centered in the area around what is now the Cal Rec Center,
Oh, yeah.
behind Poly High School. Anyways, black people this was a sundown town.
Oh, I know.
You couldn't be out at past sundown. And actually, a man who was, I believe he was Ernie's father-in-law, got a job at an Owl drugstore in downtown Long Beach, had to stay late one night, and was waiting for a bus
Uh-oh.
to get back. And he was arrested for, not for being out on the street and being African-American after dark. And so anyway, this fellow who was the unofficial mayor, I don't remember the name right now. Anyway, he would go down to the police department and act like he was these people's keeper. He'd say, I told you not to do that. He doesn't listen to me or whatever. If the cops all laughed and everything, they'd let him go, and he'd take him back home again. But it wasn't a great town. Ernie started one of the first NAACP chapters in California here with his wife, and he one of the people that they had at one of their first meetings was Paul Robeson, famous civil rights and superstar singer, athlete, you name it. And when I last saw him, this is probably a few years before his death, he was driving all over Central Long Beach, picking up old folks who didn't have a car.
God bless him.
And taking them to the polls to vote for the local election.
So that's an awesome story. Like I said, we're limited on time. And we've got to get things wrapped up soon. But I want to mention also, you wrote a book about Long Beach and the history.
Yeah.
What's the name of it?
Long Beach People and Places.
And I have a book. It got stolen out of my truck. So our next
people steal my book all the time.
I know. Our next longer version of this interview, we're going to bring the book out and show you. We'll put links. I could still put a link below on the description where I think you can still get it on Amazon.
Yes, and I've known people who got it on Amazon.
That's where I got mine.
And it's important to know that the book was actually sponsored by the Long Beach Historical Society.
So, you might even be able to get it there still. I'm not sure, but we'll work on that. We're going to talk more in detail the next time I talk to Bill about history. He knows so much about the history of Long Beach and Signal Hill and Lakewood. And
the only place in the country you can live on a street named after a dog.
Which one's that?
Freckles Avenue.
Oh, Freckles, that's right. Anyway, that's fun. Well, look, I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow night.
All right.
And then you folks out there, probably in a week or so, we're going to get back together with Bill and do a longer version. It'll be on my YouTube channel.
All right.
LOVELACE Local News. And we'll have this on the description, kind of his bio on there. You can read about that and links to some of his articles that are still out there and your book. So
thanks.
You have anything you want to add and finish up?
No, this has been fun. And
great food.
My favorite neighborhood hangout.
He's here several times a month. Yeah. I'm here several times a month. We meet for breakfast. George's 50s Diner. I want to thank you for sponsoring this and say hello to Helen, Sylvia, and There's all sorts of great food here, a lot of memorabilia. And until next time, thanks for joining Bill Lovelace, and Bill Hillberg.
Thank you.
The double bills.
Enjoy
Double bills. We're going to get 2 bills. One
All right.
for the breakfast and one for the dessert. For now, so long. We'll see you next time.
It's got it.
I hope that wasn't too. I didn't mean to keep.
How many minutes you got?